This is the CreaseCast.
Welcome, friends, to another episode of the CreaseCast. I am your host, Cody Severson. With me, as always, is Lachlan Irvin, fresh out of Petaluma, California. I am in sunny Port Moody, BC.
Hell yeah.
And coming to you with another, oh shit, the Habs just tied it up. Oh, fuck.
In case you were wondering, what time we're recording this, we are from the future.
We're from the past.
I guess the past, yes.
Yeah.
It's true. That's true.
That would make
if it were
sense.
Live, it'd be almost like we're part in the future.
Marginally in the future. If we were live streaming, it kind of makes sense. Yeah. But we are recording at 7:40 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Marc-Andre Fleury just bungled the puck in his own skates and coughed it up to Josh Anderson. The easiest goal that Josh Anderson will ever score in the playoffs. Fleury looked like he was about to smash his stick, but he decided not to. An embarrassing goal to tie the game up at 2. I'm sure the crowd is loving it. I'm loving it. And that's actually a perfect segue because one of our topics of conversation we wanted to get into, because obviously there's really not a whole lot going on in the Canucks state of the world in the hockey universe, but goaltending is, because of course the votes are getting released on NHL year-end awards. And we were kind of talking earlier about the Vezina vote and just how weird it is that the GMs are the ones that get the say in who is the best goaltender. We in the Vancouver market are, of course, privy to people like Kevin Woodley from In Goal Magazine, who is very candid in the fact that GMs around the league will call him and others at In Goal Magazine for stats and basically the decision on who they should vote for. And it kind of just, we were thinking like, okay, well, why do the GMs make the call at all? Why don't they just let the goaltending coaches handle it? Since they're the ones that, would understand the role and understand who to vote for, what stats to look at. The GMs have a lot on their plate as it is. The ones that are currently watching their teams play in the playoffs probably don't know what's going on in the North Division goaltending ranks. The guys that are on the outside looking in are probably trying to build their team for the future. They're not poring over the video of, Marc-Andre Fleury versus Andrei Vasilevsky right now. They're a bit busy. So, Lachlan, I think you're a fan of goaltending. I'm not too sure. You might be.
A little bit.
What are your thoughts on this whole GMs voting or making the final say on who was the best goaltender?
It's really weird. It's not weird in the sense of okay, if every single award was voted on by the players, the general managers, it would make sense. I'd be like, whatever. But it's so weird that this one particular award for this one particular position is exclusively voted on by the 30 general managers of the NHL. It just doesn't make any sense. It's especially because, they don't have time. They don't have time to deal with that. And like you said, Woodley generally gets asked by people who would be voting on those awards to what they should be looking at here. And it's kind of like, look, we give a lot of flack to general managers on this show from time to time for their very weird decisions. Just occasionally. And I'm gonna be slightly sympathetic here to the general managers of they've got 1,000 other things that are far more important than, oh my God, I've got to keep up on what Jonas Korpisalo is doing as the general manager of the Dallas Stars. I totally care about what's going on there, right?
Oh, definitely.
Well, this year he might have, because I think there was some division. But in normal years, no, you don't care. You're not keeping that stringent an eye on what's going on in those other market in the net. It's not worth your. It's just take it off their hands. Give it to the media people. Let them vote for it. It doesn't help. I highly doubt there's any real incentive for those general managers to vote on the award anyway. So it's like, okay, just give it to the media. If the media is already voting on 95% of the awards, give if the GMs really want to vote on something, I don't know, give them something else. Just give them literally make a new award that's not so important in terms of how the awards are. Yes, NHL awards, depending on who you ask, are meaningless or they're just kind of there. But keep in mind that those awards do matter to the players. They matter to,
they impact contracts. They impact negotiations. I'm sure Rod Brindamore, when he was renegotiating his deal with Carolina to return, he, obviously got nominated for a Vezina and was like, or not Vezina, a Jack Adams. And was like, I could increase my ask by $500K because I've got the proven track record of being an elite coach for this team. He doesn't strike me as the type that would, but other coaches might use that as it's a resume patter. I've been nominated for X award. I was voted on as the best coach by everyone evaluating the league. Whereas
100% it boosts your value it boosts your personal monetary value by a country mile. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's just very strange that the media gets a say in a bunch of other votes. They just trust them to do everything then.
Honestly,
why do players have to have a say? It's kind of it's superlatives, where at the end of when you're leaving high school, they'd be like, okay, the populace is going to vote on most likely to be caught sleeping in class. I won that, by the way. Actually, no, I came in second. I didn't win. I came in second.
I wait. Was this in your school? This was in school.
This is high school. Yeah. I got voted second most likely to be caught falling asleep in class. And then they have the other ones too, where it's most likely to become I don't know, a politician or to run the country. And I think my best friend, he won that.
I was going to say, I would be shocked if you had won that.
Oh my God, no.
Yeah,
maybe most likely to burn a country to the ground accidentally, but not actually run one.
In a middle school, most likely vote. I was voted once most likely to go to the Olympics. And by that point, I had already been once to the 2010 games as a spectator, but I've been before. Yeah, same thing. Same
competitor, visitor, it's the same crap, whatever.
Yeah, it's totally the same.
That's what it reminds me of is the players should be voting on, they already do kind of when they're the snappiest dresser, and they all voted for Austin Matthews and his weird mustache and a Hawaii 5-0 Miami Vice vibes, but do more of that. The players vote on all the fun things because they have personality. We're desperate to convince you that our player base has a personality, so here's their votes on a bunch of a weird crap that no one really cares about and they don't really matter towards contract negotiations. And then let the media, the people that evaluate the league and league-wide trends, league-wide players, let them handle it. And then the GMs can vote on, I don't know, something to do with organizations. I don't know.
Easy way to solve this. Literally give the GMs a chance to vote on all the other awards as well. In terms of still have the media vote on all the awards and then just be okay, every GM also gets a vote every year as well. Sure. Because then it can be kind of even if you don't vote, it's not going to impact a lot. Maybe you, in order to keep it from completely changing the final vote or whatever, maybe it's okay, only 16 of you will vote this year. And then another 16 will vote next year kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's because that in the media, I believe as well, it's only every year a select few get to vote each year. It changes the people who vote it changes every year depending on the city, what outlet you work for. There's all sorts of different things that I think factor into it.
Just change it up based on make it so that right now it's the illusion of exclusivity. Ooh, look at this elite club of people voting on the awards from the GMs. It's they don't even know what the fuck they're voting on half the time. That the fact that they're asking experts to make the call for them because they don't have the time. That tells it right there. Just leave it to the people that actually know what they're doing. and
or
like erase the idea
that it matters to them to get that done.
Yeah, like just get rid of the whole like the illusion of that this is some like prestigious award because the GMs are voting on it. It's not. They're guessing.
And especially because I don't consider, generally speaking, if there's one part of a hockey team that I don't consider most GMs to be a real good expert on, it's goaltending.
Yes,
this year,
that's why.
This year they did a fine job. Like this year, all the finalists, like the finalists are never like egregious or anything. I'm always like, yep, okay, I get it. But like sometimes it's like there are other guys who I might have expected to be kind of higher on this list, or I think could have been in the finalists here.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, GMs generally are another one of the groups is like goalies are voodoo, and we don't understand them.
Yeah, we don't know, so we'll leave it to Kevin Woodley to tell us.
I don't know. Andre Vasilevsky again.
Yeah, it's a lot of legacy stuff too, where they're just like, we don't know who to vote for the goaltenders. Here's the top three. Vasilevsky's on a really good team. Philip Grubauer's on a really good team.
Like the 5th year in a row. Like,
yeah, it's a lot of like you can almost see the thought process where the collective GMs sorted the league by like winners or like most points or most wins, and then they saw who the starting goalie was, and we're like, yeah, okay, those three, pick those guys, and that's it.
And yeah, and I mean, if there's any better proof that the GMs need to not have the goaltending vote anymore, it's the fact that Roberto Luongo did not win the 2007 Vezina, even though he was far and away the best goaltender in the NHL and finished second in Hart Trophy voting that year for league MVP. The only person who finished in front of him was Sidney Flippin Crosby. He deserved to win goalie of the Vezina Trophy. And now people love to use the whole, but Luongo didn't win any individual awards as an excuse for why he shouldn't get his jersey retired by the Canucks or why he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. It's complete bullcrap. It's I get that Brodeur set a wins record that year. He also played in front of a way better team. Like, don't even get me started on that. I mean, I'm already started on it, but
but you can go on about it.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah. But that segues into like that conversation kind of segues into one of the the awards that was being dished out, which was the GM of the Year awards. And just kind of on the whole topic of like goaltending, and GMs have no idea what to do about goaltending. They rely on basically experts to tell them what to do or who to trust and rely on. One of the guys that were nominated for GM of the Year.
Yeah, the 3 finalists
are all GMs of teams that have had like horrible runs of goaltending luck in the past season, or sorry, not bad goaltending luck, but great goaltending luck that got them to where they are. So Marc Bergevin, he of course had Carey Price, who's been there for him and had kind of a shitty year, but then he's kind of turned it around in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Lou Lamoriello, he's had a good run of getting like elite goaltending, and that a lot of that has to do with the play structure that they play around with Barry Trotz, how like not permissive they are on shots or goals allowed or chances or whatever. And then Bill Zito, who basically rode like Chris Drieger and Spencer Knight and a bunch of kids to playoffs, and the guy that was signed before him, like it wasn't his fault, but Sergei Bobrovsky, a $10 million goaltender, absolutely gave him nothing. So you have like all these GMs that are basically riding the high of like unprecedented goalie success to become GM of the Year nominees, which is very funny. And as I kind of alluded to earlier, they make the vote after the second round of the playoffs, which is just the stupidest thing, because teams can luck their way through the playoffs, and then what? The people voting are like, oh, wow, luck. They're this person's GM of the Year because this team lucked his way to the second round. Like, what? This is one of the most galaxy brain things I've ever seen. Literally every single other NHL award is voted on
at the end of the conclusion of the regular season. It is based entirely on how your team did during the regular season. And here we have three finalists for GM of the Year because this took place after the second round of the playoffs. The guy who built the President's Trophy winning team, the Colorado Avalanche, Joe Sakic, is not here. He literally had built the best team in the league, and he's not here. And guess what? The person that built the second best team in the league, Kelly McCrimmon of the Golden Knights, also not here. It's literally
Tampa Bay Lightning, Julien Brisebois. He's not there either.
And it's quite literally the holy, hey, your team's they're turning it into the Jack Adams Award, where it's, oh, your team did better than I expected, particularly in the goaltending and playoff department. The Panthers, like the one team that I'm literally like, okay, yeah, you deserve to be here, is Bill Zito with the Panthers. Yeah. Because, sure, he wrote, the goaltending was, pretty darn good down the stretch of the Panthers, but he also added a lot and, changed a lot about the Panthers' depth, specifically the way they approach bringing in depth contracts and everything. And he built a much stronger Panthers team, and it only took him 1 year to do it. So I completely give him credit for that. Yeah. But, okay. Lou Lamoriello, there's a lot of people, I understand that, he builds pretty decent teams. His record shows that they don't miss the playoffs all that often. He's a relatively strong. I know some people have very much stronger opinions on Lou Lamoriello, particularly I know Samantha Chang has a very strong opinion, but I'm kind of like, well, okay, he's fine. He does all right. He does a pretty he at least gets teams that probably shouldn't make the playoffs and is able to build something that gets into the postseason. That's fair. The team finished 4th in their division. Why? Why does that warrant GM of the Year? They finished they nearly missed the playoffs to a certain extent. Yeah, they were 9 points up on the Rangers, but they were the last team in their division. Come on. That doesn't warrant GM of the Year. Neither does Montreal. They finished 4th in a division that was terrible. Sure, they made it far in the
they're also completely capped out for next season. And so it's what are we evaluating here? Are we evaluating the fact that they just made it to the second round and that's fun? Or are you actually evaluating him on the attributes that are required to be a good GM? Maybe not losing Devin Taves for nothing, right? Everyone's like, oh, Joe Sakic overpaid for Devin Taves. It's well, at least he didn't lose Devin Taves because he capped out his team, and that team is still capped out. And then people are like, oh, well, he gave up a bunch of nothing for Zajac and Palmieri, and Palmieri's finally decided to show up in playoffs. And it's hey, okay, that's still the bare minimum of the job. That's why I'm I don't know how, I say I don't know how, but I do know how, but I don't know how Julien Brisebois hasn't been a nominee every single year since he took over for Steve Yzerman, because he's done everything required of a GM to field not only a contender, but a team that is cap compliant, works around what they've been given, creating depth, having a elite feeder system in the AHL, knowing when to sell, knowing how to take advantage of teams that are willing to overpay you for pieces that you don't really need. Jim Benning, JT Miller. But that's where I'm okay, how did he not get his team's still in the second round of the playoffs? They look like they're about to crush the Islanders. Literally
the two best teams are still in the playoffs, aren't finalists here. And hell, you could argue that Steve Yzerman's work on the Lightning is more warranted to win GM of the Year than some of the ones that did some of these finalists. You could be look at the core that Steve Yzerman built. We're gonna, even though he's in Detroit now, we're gonna give it to him anyway. That would still be that makes more sense. That makes more sense to me. It's a completely stupid thing that's clearly based on did your team get hot in the last?
Ultimate recency bias type stuff, and who got hot.
Straight up. Like, there are so many other general managers, I would argue, who deserve to finish in that spot ahead of these guys, like Minnesota. Like, Minnesota got into the playoffs when it looked like they were cooked last year. Mm-hmm. You could argue Bill Guerin deserved it a little bit more than Lamoriello or Bergevin. You could
honestly argue that Steve Yzerman could be a nominee because he did something crazy and actually get pretty good play out of his team down the stretch by selling a player like Anthony Mantha to the Washington Capitals. Arguably, I mean, he's basically doing what he did in Tampa, where he identified players that wouldn't be in their prime for when their team is going to compete. So he sold early, and that was something that Tampa did a lot of. They sold a bunch of pieces early to play at teams like the New York Rangers to try and give them a chance to win in where they thought their window was going to be. And that's what he's doing in Detroit. And look what he got. He has who's that guy from Jacob Vrana or whatever?
He's got Vrana.
Who had an unreal goal scoring pace. He's still got a good core. He's got former Canuck Troy Stecher producing a goal saved above average rate that is better than most or every single Canuck player. So good pickup for him there, especially at 1.3 or $1.6 million, whatever it is. It's very cheap.
Yeah, there are lots of general managers in this league who have done arguably a better job. That includes the ones, and some of them that didn't make the postseason. Your team wasn't going to be good regardless. They weren't going to make the playoffs probably, but the way that you guys have started building that foundation up, sure, give them a look here. And I get that some people will be like, but it's based on the year and what they built and how it's bearing fruit. Sure, but that's still there are still lots more. But still, that still doesn't mean Marc Bergevin or Lou Lamoriello should be on here based on what this award should really be about, which is how you did in the regular season. I assume the thought process behind this was we want to see what your trade deadline pickups do. I assume that's why this vote goes later, but it's that's 3 players at most for most situations. So you're going to judge the entire situation of how a GM does at their job based on them picking up 2-3 extra guys, swapping out 2-3 guys in March. Why? Why does that change why does that make any difference compared to what they do during the full regular season? It doesn't. Mm-hmm. It's a very silly way of looking at it. It completely shortchanges the GMs that have built a consistently strong hockey team, like the Lightning, like the Avalanche, like the Golden Knights to a degree. They're out there and they're not getting and they don't get the same due just because they didn't go as far in the playoffs.
As we kind of know now, a lot of the voting or the nominees and the winners are kind of legacy based. How have they performed historically? Alex Barkov won the Selke Trophy this year, and you saw pretty much every single person in hockey stats community say, "Oh, Barkov's a good pick." But it wasn't his best defensive year, not by any stretch. He was actually a lot better 3 years ago, but it's a fine pick. And that's kind of that's been the Norris. How many years were people Drew Doughty's overdue? He should have won years ago.
Victor Hedman this year. He's
already won.
Victor Hedman wasn't good. And Victor Hedman by Victor Hedman standards, which still might be, really good. Which is still exceptionally good. Probably still a first pairing defenseman probably on literally every team except for maybe 2. But that doesn't necessarily mean he should be a finalist for the Defenseman of the Year award if there were 3 defensemen who played better than him this year. It's silly. Just some of the ways, and honestly, that might be an episode we do all on our own this summer, is just how can you fix NHL voting? Because there's a lot of things that I think are wrong with the way we look at those votes. And some people are always, and I see a lot of people being like, well, this isn't the way the vote it's being voted on, so you should still vote the way it's expected to. Don't be like a martyr or like a sort of thing. And I see that kind of like thought process from people all the time. And I'm kind of like, okay, but if we keep voting on it the same way every single year, then it never changes. Like you're missing the whole point here. Where I do want to, like, I think I saw people getting mad at Dom Lucian because he left Mark Stone entirely off his Selke ballot. And I assume based on the way Dom Lucian usually votes on those awards, that he's basing it off of his data, the way that because from my understanding, every year he bases it off of like the systems and the data that he builds and the way that system finds who the best players are at those positions, at each of the criteria and everything. So sometimes his votes often come out looking very different from other people's. And every year people are like, how could you leave so-and-so off the ballot or something? It's like, well, because my system did not see them as top 5. Yeah. And it's like,
which is a lot to accept for some people.
Which is very hard for some people to accept, specifically other like media people who are like, well, we all voted for this guy, so even if they didn't win, they should still be on your ballot. But it's like, okay, that's not how it should. That's not necessarily how it should work. Unless it's Leon Draisaitl, who somehow got two second place Selke votes, and everyone's like, "Wow, I can't wait to find out which Edmonton writers gave him second place."
We all know who it was.
Yeah, because there's no way it was anyone else. They're like,
even 100%. Seeing Connor McDavid on there as a 5th place vote, I was like, "Come on!" And Austin Matthews, like.
See, this is actually one of the ways I actually wouldn't mind seeing the way awards are voted on. And this is personal opinion. People can debate whether or not this is actually a good idea. I do understand the inherent want to say give a vote to somebody who you cover on a regular basis. If people want to give a 5th place vote to whoever, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, whether or not it's a bad pick, I'm kind of like, whatever. Like, okay, if you're going to purposely give out a vote to somebody just because they're on the team you cover, if you want to give them 5th place, the 1 point, sure, why not? Just don't put them in 2nd or 3rd because you see them all the time. Don't do that. Like, that's silly. Like, there are some times where I'm like, like Jacob Markstrom, I think that one year didn't get a Vezina vote or something. There was like one, or
he had like a 3rd place vote or something like that. I was
kind of like, I could very much, or like there was something weird where it was like he didn't get a lot of votes in like certain departments, and I was kind of like, honestly, you could make a good case that Jacob Markstrom was a league MVP to a certain extent, not over all the other people. If I were voting, I might have given Jacob Markstrom a 5th place vote for Vezina. Is it gonna change the entire outcome of the vote? No, it's not gonna change anything.
What if it was like that 1 point was the difference?
That would mean I had to have like somebody who wasn't in like the top 2 on my ballot already, right?
Fair.
Right. So exactly. So the odds of you, unless you've gone completely nuts with it and started just completely shortchanging certain people in favor of people who you cover on a regular basis, then it's not going to change the final result. So I'm like, give him 5th. Give him 5th if you want. Like, I don't care. I'm not gonna dump on anyone for giving literally any player a 5th place vote. I couldn't care less.
I did appreciate and laugh very hard at the fact that Ottawa had 2 picks for a Selke and Canucks had 0.
I mean, there wasn't really a Selke option. There was there,
but like Ottawa was terrible the whole year. Like I don't care like how Nick Paul and how Connor Brown played really well. Their team was still awful. Yeah, one of them was. I thought that was very funny. I was guessing that it was him, but because I just thought it would be funny if it was, and of course it was. So that's pretty great.
It was Nick Paul
1,000,000,000%, and it turned out to be true.
See, there you go. That's a perfect use of a 5th place vote. Like, that's perfect. Yeah. Go for it. Yeah. Who cares?
Still very funny the Canucks were so bad that they couldn't even get a pity 5th place vote by the local guys. They're just like, nope. It was bad.
Who will get a pity 5th place vote this year? Out of all the Canucks in any Actually, you know what? I literally just figured out who it is. It's Thatcher Demko. Thatcher Demko will get Vezina votes. And he literally,
really?
why wouldn't he? My biggest...
He was pretty terrible for that 1 month.
Literally for 1 month, and then he became, I believe, based on up until the pandemic pause.
Yeah, then he decided to turn it on.
I believe he became the second best goals saved above average in the entire, or something insane, in the entire NHL.
He was first or second basically on most metrics, I think.
I think
most
the only
saved
goalie
above expectation.
Yeah, I think the only goalie ahead of him in most of those metrics was Vasilevsky.
Yeah,
and
correct.
I was literally I don't know if this is considered a hot take, but in terms of what the Canucks lost out of the COVID outbreak, I fully maintain that had they kept going, had they been able to keep going, Thatcher Demko would have had a Vezina winning season. He would have finished up having at least finished in the top 3 finalists for the Vezina.
That is a hot take.
I think that completely tripped him up because he came out a lot, you remember he came out hurt. It took him a little bit longer to get back into the net. They ended up, of course, going on that grind that completely, took down his numbers. I think if they had kept on the normal pace, he would have finished. I think he would have had a season warranting possibly winning the Vezina at that point because of literally how much he was just stealing 30,000, every other game for the Canucks. I was very much maintaining he could have won the Vezina had they kept going.
So quick question. How much of this is also dependent on the fact that he is also from California?
None. I'm Canadian. Why do I care? That doesn't matter. Yes,
you're in California right now.
Yes, we're both California expats, expat goaltenders who
you have a dog. He's got a dog.
Yes, I do think Thatcher Demko and I would be I'm sure Thatcher Demko and I would be very good friends in another life. In a life where I wasn't a media person. But yeah, but no, come on. He was great. He was doing incredible before everyone got sick. He was doing incredible.
Before the wheels completely fell off.
Yeah, literally.
And I'm played complete shit. Yeah.
As soon as they came back and he was, back to playing a little bit under expectation just because of, recovering from a serious illness, I was like, well, okay, it's not going to happen this time around. I get it. But I think if they had kept going, he would have finished in the finalists for sure.
Well, you weren't kidding when you put out the call for questions that you had some hot takes to dish out.
Apparently, I didn't think that was going to be a hot take today, but here we are. I guess
my hot take is that Quinn Hughes is going to win the Vezina himself. No, I'm kidding. Not the Norris, the Vezina. He's going to be.
He'd have to win points away from Alex Edler for the Vezina. that's clearly at Edler's level of area of expertise on that blue line. So. I don't know. I think it would have been hard for Hughes to beat out his team, his defensive teammate for the Vezina.
I think we talked about this on our show, but were we both saying that in the final game of the year that they should dress Alex Edler as a goaltender if it's going to be his final game as a Canuck, just for a period, the third period, just put him out in goalie gear, see what he can do. It would just be so funny and
put him on the bench.
The season was such a wash, so it was who cares if he's in net and allows 7 goals? It would just be really funny. Yes. I wonder if there's probably some kind of thing that says you can't have a skater come in when your goalies are healthy, but
the rules are very strict on emergency goaltenders. I remember you remember the Scott Foster year probably, right? He was the first emergency goalie that became super popular. Mm-hmm. Well, at least within from a national hockey standpoint. Right. Obviously, Chris Levesque is number 1 in our hearts here. But Scott earlier in that season, I think just a little bit earlier in the year, the Hawks had to use another emergency goaltender just on the bench. He didn't play, but they were winning the game by a lot. To that point or something. I think this was the Hawks. This might have been the Flyers even actually. I'm trying to remember who it was, but all I remember, I'm pretty sure it was Chicago. I remember Joel Quenneville being involved in this. they were winning the game. Whoever their starter wasn't hurt. But
so they tried to put the emergency
with about
in,
a minute left. Yeah, with about a minute left in the game, and with them already winning like 6-1. How did that not get called? Sorry, Corey Perry just got completely high sticked by Jonathan Marchessault away from the puck and got no call. Basically, Quenneville tried to put him in the game. The refs immediately shooed the goalie back out. They're like, nope, you can't do that. Your regular goalie's fine. You can't put the emergency goalie in. And I think I'm piecing together why I'm kind of remembering Philly in here, because I believe this happened in Philadelphia. And the Flyers fans were the ones booing, started booing. Like, they were like, come on, let him in. Yeah, they were like, come on, it's a minute left. Who gives a shit? Just let him in. They're all booing. Like, I think it was something like that. Like, it was something very, very funny. And now the refs are making some weird motions that I've never seen before. They're going to scrape the ice or whatever. But yeah, like, there are rules about it. So, like, you can't put them in, but you can put them on the bench, I believe, if there's proof that the other goalie's hurt. I guess we've talked probably way too much already about awards for like for this episode.
Well, I mean, there's like we said, there is nothing Canucks related to talk about. Like, what's happened in the last couple of days? Nothing. We don't know what they're going to do. There's no idea.
Because you know what it is? We've hit the weird part of the season where there's not really, as a team that's not currently in the playoffs, there's not really anything else you can do. Yeah. Like, they're kind of in the limbo of, okay, we just need to wait for the playoffs to end. We need to, and then start prepping for the Seattle draft, because there are like teams that actually probably very likely there are teams currently in the playoffs that are like, oh, they're going to be close to the cap by the end of the season. They might be a team we'd want to negotiate with about certain players, in terms of who might come to who we might be able to get out of other teams, because we don't have as many necessarily protectable assets going into the expansion draft. So you're kind of just in limbo as a team, you're just kind of waiting. Like, you're just very much in the waiting game. I guess the Sedin thing could still happen sooner rather than later. That's kind of
but it's such a non-issue. It's just like, okay, they're signed to be junior GMs.
And we don't even we have no idea what they're going to do, like what their role within this team is going to be. I guess if we're going to if there is hockey stuff to talk about, it is just really the semifinals. I mean, the fact that the Knights and the Habs are playing right now.
Overtime, baby.
Overtime is already impressive. The fact that they're doing it without their head coach, who tested positive for COVID, is wild. The fact that they're playing right now. I mean, like,
I think have you written for Daily Hive?
I have written for Daily Hive before, yes.
So your former contact, Rob Williams, had a tweet earlier this season that, I mean, it didn't really criticize, but it pointed out that Dominique Ducharme was very, very bad at keeping a mask on his face.
Yes.
And sure enough, all through the playoffs, you're constantly seeing him pull the mask down. And of course, he's the guy that tests positive for COVID.
Yeah. Now let's be like very clear here, right? Like, so Dominique Ducharme does have both of his vaccines. He has gotten double vaccination.
Yes.
So this is not a case of a guy who had been skipping, had not been going to get himself vaccinated or anything like that. He's fully vaccinated. I believe the whole team is. I believe the whole Canadiens team is. He's under the window of immunity, which is, I believe, 2 weeks. Like, after you get your second shot, it takes 2 weeks for you to achieve full immunity. But because he was already half vaccinated, because he was already at that point, I believe he's not he doesn't have symptoms. Like, he's not one of the players who has symptoms currently. And holy God, the Canadiens just won. That's wild. That was a great goal too. Great setup. Good for Montreal. Up 2-1 in this series. Although I think they're going to try and challenge here because the Knights haven't even left the bench. Because I think there might have been potentially offside, but we'll see.
That's definitely offside.
Right? Let me see. I have not gotten to the replay. I'm still a little bit behind. But basically, the thing with Ducharme, right, is that he is not in COVID protocol because he's sick necessarily. He's in protocol because of the fact that he has the bug and can pass it on to people who say aren't vaccinated. Oh, man, I was not paying attention when they showed the slow-mo. Anderson might be offside. No, they didn't even challenge it. It's over. They're done. They're leaving. Okay. Well, it's over.
Rock and roll.
Holy cow. Okay. Well, that kind of changes the conversation a little bit here. Montreal is now up 2-1 in this series against Vegas. They keep finding ways to win.
Dominique Ducharme was the problem.
I'm not going to say he's necessarily a bad coach. I just think that he hasn't necessarily been the best coach for the team that he has. I don't think that necessarily changed. Like tonight, they didn't look good. They won tonight despite looking pretty bad for most
Carey Price,
of this
baby.
game.
I think when we did our playoff predictions, I said I had a feeling that Carey Price was going to goalie Vegas, and then they got just completely run over in the first game. But now I'm like, oh shit, he might actually goalie them, which would be so funny, frankly.
Yeah.
And then all the people are, and then what's his name? Bergevin will probably win GM of the year because Carey Price goalies them, which absolutely rocks. But yeah, we were kind of worried that these series were going to be duds, especially the Islanders Lightning series, because it was just kind of what does an unstoppable force do when it meets an immovable object? Fortunately, the unstoppable force has been unreal. It's only 2-1. It's not like the series are over, but obviously you want to be up in the series. And I think Habs Lightning would just be the weirdest possible series imaginable. Two East Coast teams playing in the Stanley Cup Finals in the year of our Lord 2021. That's wild. I would be all for it just because of how fucking weird it would be. It would make no sense. I'd be all for it. It would also suck though, because it'd be you hate to see a goalie like Marc-Andre Fleury play incredibly well throughout the regular season, the playoffs. It's finally a year where it's how people always look back at the Penguins dynasty and they're just oh, Fleury won his cups, but it was in spite of him. They won, but he didn't really have much to do with it. And you're okay, well, don't be rude to Marc-Andre Fleury. He's such a nice guy. And this year, you could arguably say if Vegas won the cup this year, you would be oh, that was because of Fleury. He was unbelievable for them on most nights in the playoffs.
Oh yeah.
Whereas now, if they get bounced, it's just going to be an asterisk. Finally got nominated for Vezina, and it didn't matter.
It's going to be his fault again somehow. We're at the point where what team's goalie isn't leading the Conn Smythe race? Even in the Islanders' case, I don't think. Is there really anyone else who might deserve it other than Varlamov? I guess that Sorokin's played a bit.
Varlamov would have been the pick, I guess. Maybe
Brock Nelson, I guess. The Islanders,
Beauvillier's got a ton of points. Surprisingly.
The Islanders might be that team that if they won, depending on how long the series goes, it might be one of those, well, that whole team was so evenly good, we're going to give it to someone on the other team instead. We're going to give the Conn Smythe to whoever played on the other side. Because that happens sometimes.
The J.S. Giguère Award.
Yeah, the J.S. Giguère Award. I feel bad. I feel bad because I do think that players from the opposing team who doesn't win should be up for the Conn Smythe a little more often. I think sometimes they don't get their due. But in terms of the Islanders and the Lightning series, it's not been very. I will say I don't think it's been very good. I think it's not been a good series.
The games have been incredibly dull.
The one game that was any good was a complete just just stomping. Was just the Lightning just absolutely curb stomping the Islanders on power plays again. Like they just crushed them in that. And then you see it started to get a little physical. Like the physicality of those two teams is really, really like it matches well. Brayden Point has been sneaky good. Like, and that's kind of one of the questions I wanted to ask you is like, okay, so every year we always have the whole who's the most underrated player in the NHL, and Barkov has been that guy for a long time. He wins a personal award, so it's kind of like, okay, he's no longer the most underrated for sure. Whether you know, putting aside the whole people talking about you means you're not underrated because everybody talks about you all the time. But I'll ask the question: is Brayden Point the most underrated player in the NHL right now?
I think he may. I feel like he's maybe put himself on the map in last year's playoffs a bit. So I don't really know if he's that underrated per se anymore. He's obviously playing out of his mind again in this playoffs. That's, I mean, for people like us who like are aware of how good he's been for the last couple seasons, it's not like anything new. I don't know if he's the NHL's most underrated player. I'd have to like really think on who's the most underrated player. He's like unbelievable. Like that's for sure. I just don't think he's any more than NHL's most underrated player. I almost feel like Barkov still is the most underrated player because of like the market he plays in. Like any of those Florida Panthers players that they've had, like Aaron Ekblad, for example, like he's incredibly underrated as a defenseman because of where he plays.
Yeah, Jonathan Huberdeau.
Huberdeau too. Like they have like unbelievably good players, but no one ever talks about them because the team has never been good in spite of how good these guys are. And now that they're actually like they made playoffs with Joel Q, didn't work out against Tampa, but like at least people noticed them a bit. Barkov wins a Selke. It's kind of like, okay, maybe eyes get drawn towards like the other team in Florida, and they're no longer just like really good guys that you hear about, but they're actually like, you know, talked about like on a consistent basis. Like, cause that was kind of like the Mark Stone thing, right? Like everyone knew Ottawa had like this unreal player in Mark Stone, and he was going to command a lot on his next deal. And then he got traded to Vegas, and it was kind of like, oh, what's going on here? And he was still kind of underrated. And then after his first year in Vegas, it was like, oh shit, Mark Stone is like legitimately like one of the best players in the NHL. Yeah. How could Ottawa let this guy go? And now he's just like every year since it's just been like, oh yeah, Mark Stone is unbelievable. Like that always tends to happen.
And right? All it took for him to go was to go to a real hockey market like Las Vegas.
Yeah, everyone's favorite market.
Vegas. He left a complete, you know, just a very quiet, a forgotten city that just happens to have hockey sometimes in Ottawa.
I've heard about it.
Ottawa, Canada. Yeah. I will say I think Brayden Point could make a good argument for, specifically for the fact that like the first names that come to mind when you think of the Lightning, what are Stamkos? It's Kucherov, who's won a Hart Trophy. It's Vasilevsky, who's won Vezina trophies. And Hedman for sure. And then you have Brayden Point, who actually led their team in points during the regular season. And now as the first player, I think since the 90s, since Martin Havlat in 2006 with the Senators to score, I think, goals in 6 straight games, I think is the stat line. And that's wild. He is very easily like, he's possibly he's already, like, we already knew he's one of their best players, but I think that just how important he is to the way that the Lightning operate and their ability to win games always flies under the radar because of the bigger names on his own team. He's kind of just, and that's kind of the way Tampa's built in a sense, is just the fact that they have so many players who are just, again, could be second line, first line guys on other teams and are just flying under the radar, playing like third line minutes like second line minutes because of how deep that team is. Like Andre Palat is another guy who is just always on the score sheet. Just
constantly like a top 5 scorer on the team.
Yeah,
like,
plays 20
never
minutes a
talked
night.
about
like, it's wild
at all. Like we're talking about underrated players. Probably Palat has got to be one of them. Like,
up
he's
there.
like a consistent, like, I mean, I want to say he's at least 15 goals every season for the last like 6 years or something like that. Like he's never talked about when like they always talk about the core of Tampa and like no one ever talks about Andre Palat or the fact that like he's just been like this guy who was picked in like the late 7th round one year and has just been like this dominant offensive force for them for like years. Like that rules. I mean, Mikhail Sergachev, like
Sergachev's another guy.
They're full of them.
They're full of them. Yeah, they still have Cal Foote. They still have Cal Foote, who hasn't even made the team
yet.
Like,
team
they have so many guys.
Gems.
Yeah, they've done again. We already talked a little bit about Julian Brisebois today. It's just an incredible job at being able to kind of supplement that team with great players and just consistently roll out more and more talent each year. Yeah. It's just incredible. They've done a really good job there.
Truly.
Habs and Knights, like we've already kind of talked about it, just like slightly, but I mean, the fact that they're like even in the series is just nuts. Like, and now they're up 2-1. Do you think they can they hold on here? Can they actually hold on and get it done?
I feel like game 4 will probably obviously if they win game 4 and they're up 3-1, like that's a big hole for Vegas to climb out of. And I think most fans saw like last year in the bubble, like when Vegas was, gave up that 3-1 series lead against the Canucks, it broke them against Dallas. So even if they get through like a 3-1 deficit against Montreal, like there's no telling how they'll look against, Tampa. Like that could be like just a death blow to them because that's like a huge thing to overcome is having your shooting confidence completely rattled by a hot goaltender.
Yeah.
But if the Habs are up 3-1, like that would be just for the memes. That'd be really funny.
It'd be very fun.
I appreciate like Vegas's like all out approach every single season. It's just like going for the big ticket every time. And I mean, they recognized that their window to win was a lot earlier than they had expected. Like, I don't think they came out of the expansion draft thinking like we've got a contender here. I think they saw how they played and then we're like, oh shit, I think our team's way better than we expected. And they started making moves that not only helped them short term in that first year where they made the Cup final, but it also set them up like down the road. Like they didn't really go for expiring UFAs that were going to walk the following year. Like they went for players that were going to stick around. And you can say what you will about like how polite it was to sign Nate Schmidt to a deal and then immediately trade him. Like they're still bold and brash with their moves that help them set up like a not a dynasty, but like a very solid contender with a large window to compete. Like if they lose, if they like drop out of the playoffs against the Habs here, I'm not writing them off and being like, oh, they need to rebuild, their team's screwed. Like they've still got Pietrangelo.
I mean, they might go and just trade everybody for Eichel, but
hey, they might trade Max Pacioretty. They might trade Stone. They might trade everybody. Yeah. They might trade Shea or like you have no idea what these guys. They have no idea what they value. They see that golden prize out on the free agent market or whoever's like available for trade, and they're like, we want it. That's ours now. And they go for it. And I respect that. That's, I mean, one of these days it's surely going to backfire. Like, cause you can't keep going after the prize pig and just like expect it to always work out. Eventually they're going to have to start like drafting, pretty high to supplement their aging core. Like Pietrangelo's not going to be playing this way for the next 4 years. Like he's going to fall off. Shea Theodore is going to need pay increases. Mark Stone isn't going to hold up. Max Pacioretty is obviously going to be gone eventually. Chandler Stevenson, like Alex Tuck, like all these guys are eventually going to age out, and you need youth to replace it. They have Cody Glass, but like outside of that, like I think Cody Glass was like the only pick that they actually retained out of like all the assets they spent to get Mark Stone.
Yeah,
they have nothing
because
left.
I mean, Nick Suzuki was one of their other picks, and they've traded him. He's now Canadian.
Exactly.
He's now playing on the other side. I mean, I will say this, like in terms of the way that the Knights have gone, like actually this is an interesting kind of like little trivia bit for you. I want to see if you can get this. How many players from the original Golden Knights team are still here without looking at the rosters? Just going off what you can remember, how many of the original Golden Knights are still here? It's kind of wild.
I want to say it's only like 7 or 8. It isn't a lot.
Yeah, it's not a lot. From what I can tell here from looking at the lists, you got Alex Tuck, you got Riley Smith, Ryan Reeves, I believe Jonathan Marchessault. I think Nosek is still here.
Fleury.
Fleury is still here. You've got let's see, William Karlsson is still here. And William Carrier is still here. And then on defense, you got Whitecloud, Theodore, and McNabb. I believe that is all of them, unless John Merrill is still here somewhere hanging around.
No, he is. He is on the Habs.
He's on the Habs. All right, and there that's right. And there you go. That's all of them. That's literally all of them. Every other player is gone from that original team. They're entirely gone. It is incredible how much better they've gotten. Like, just wild stuff.
I would hate Vegas to win a cup before the Canucks do, just because it would really suck to see like a brand new franchise win that early on in their career. But like from a hockey standpoint, obviously seeing a Tampa or Vegas finale would be the most like the best hockey available to fans. And so like you kind of have to vote for that. But obviously I like a lot of players on the Habs. So I think it would be very funny if they won.
Oh yeah. It'd be incredible if they won. I think definitely. I think you gotta. I think for the memes, you just gotta hope the Habs get through.
Yeah. At the very least, for the memes.
Yeah. And last but not least, on the news docket today, we didn't talk about this in the last episode. I think we'll just kind of briefly touch on it now. Yeah. Gerard Gallant hired by the New York Rangers as their head coach, as their new head coach, replacing David Quinn. Here's the thing with the Rangers. I don't actually think coaching was really their problem under David Quinn. I thought he was fine. Maybe that's just because I don't watch the Rangers enough, but just from what I saw coming out of the organization, I don't really think coaching was the huge issue. But of course, now you do have one situation that's brewing, which is the fact that James Dolan, head of MSG, has a lot more say in the day-to-day of the Rangers again, which is not good.
He's got a vision, that's for sure.
Yeah, but Gerard Gallant is still a very good coach, and it's kind of shocking that he's been gone from the NHL this long and that no one hired him in the last so many years.
The league acts that way a lot. Look at Mike Gillis. You got a guy that literally won the GM of the Year award and couldn't get a job after getting canned because I guess they didn't like all his progressive ways of
he was not part of the boys club. No.
Yeah, and so but you're like,
seems to be, which is why it's weird.
I have no idea, because you hear about the old boys club all the time. You're like, well, the guy used to play. He was an agent for players and coaches and all these people. He has the connections, but because he circumvented the cap with Lawrence Gilman, Lawrence Gilman still gets jobs. So what gives here? It's just people just didn't like how brash he was. I don't know. It's very bizarre. And then Gerard Gallant, everyone said it was so ridiculous of the Knights to get rid of him after the most unlucky playoff series imaginable, where Logan Couture, not Logan Couture, Joe Pavelski gets knocked out by a weird shove by Cody Eakin, and then that somehow means they should get rid of him as soon as there's a sign of problems in the following season. And there weren't really even problems in the next season. They had a winning record and the GMs were just nope, get rid of him.
Yeah,
and so I feel after that, the old boys club would have been Gerard probably should still be coaching in the NHL. There's a lot of coaches out there, Dominique Ducharme, for example. Claude Julien got fired this year. And he was doing fine. They had same thing. They had a little bit of issues, and the ownership and GMs were get rid of him, start fresh. And the Gallant thing's just more along that line, where it's just should he really have been fired this soon? And he should probably be the coach of some team.
And now he's getting Arizona, the biggest market in the NHL, New York. That's where else to go.
Like Arizona, like they were relying on Rick Tocchet, who like got like quite a bit out of like a bad roster, and he's gonna go to like Seattle. But I'm like how does is Claude Julien really like that bad of a coach? Because he got out. Because speaking of getting a lot out of not much, Claude Julien, like to start the season with the Habs was like unreal. Like this team like looked like just as good as like the Leafs and looked like a force until they had like goalie problems. When Carey Price got injured, things got like a little dicey, and like that's not his fault. Shit happens.
No.
So I don't know. Like you just look around the league at some of the head coaches and like just like the poor, awful records, and you're like there's no way Gallant should have been on the outside for that long. Obviously, he's on New York, where I'm sure he'll be fine. Like, he's got Panarin to work with. Like any coach should look good.
New York's got a bright future. Like that team's going to be good. Like I've maintained that team's going to be very good down the line. Like they've got a lot of great young pieces there, and provided that they don't like do what I think teams under that ownership group have been notorious to do, which is kind of jump the gun and hit the panic button a little bit.
Jack Eichel, maybe.
Yeah, like seriously, like I don't doubt that Jack Eichel would make them maybe a little bit tougher in a little bit higher scoring in the shorter term, but I think the amount you give up for him would very easily shorten your window. Like it would shorten your window to be successful. Whereas I think the team that they've assembled right now with time will be one of the longer running good playoff teams when they get to that point. So you just have to hope that they kind of stay the new GM, which is Chris Drury, I believe. Just hope they stay the course. That's kind of just the main thing for them is don't let the panic set in and just stay the course of what's going to give you success down the line, and don't make any rash calls and start trading the farm away for like a Jack Eichel. As much as Jack Eichel might help you might have the assets to potentially acquire Jack Eichel without giving up the like a Capo Caco or an Alexis Lafreniere, but it's a risk. I don't know if you want to do that. It's a huge risk for what you have in the cupboard right now.
I always just look at the Buffalo Sabres when they at one point had Ryan O'Reilly, Jack Eichel, Jeff Skinner playing unbelievably, Kyle Okposo being like one of their top 5 scorers, and it still wasn't enough to be a good team. So obviously the allure of Jack Eichel would like make any GM froth if he wants out. You'd be like, oh yeah, give me a Jack Eichel, Artemi Panarin line. Like, what GM wouldn't want that? But as we all know, watching hockey, you can have the 2 best players on the planet, and that still doesn't mean you're going to have success. Case in point, the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah. So now, if there's one pro for Gallant, he's found ways to take a team that looked like it had more or less nothing and turn them into a division winner. So it's possible. Sure. It's totally possible.
Yeah, it's just if I'm the GM speaking, I'd be very hesitant to want to devote like 12% of the cap to a player that still might not make a difference. Because,
especially when you're already paying so much to Panarin as well.
Yeah, like you 20% of your cap or whatever set on 2 players, and you have no guarantee that the depth you can build or surround them or insulate them with is going to be enough to get you to playoffs. That's a big risk, especially
it's a huge risk.
Especially when you don't really. I mean, they have a pretty good pipeline, but not to the point where I'd be like, sell everything to get Jack Eichel.
No. I mean, for chaos, I want it. I would love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd love to see for chaos them trade the farm for Jack Eichel. But it's probably not a shrewd business decision for them. All right.
No, I agree.
Yeah. And I think with that, there's one last thing we wanted to do. Just one last thing, because this episode's been a little short. There hasn't been as much to talk about. We're going to do one last little kind of just interesting kind of question thing. where I was like, you know what, like let's rank like the best possible jersey matchups in the Final Four. And I guess by rank, I mean like we'll say just I don't know, like out of like
your favorite combination that would be in the final.
Yeah, let's go with that. Let's go with like best possible combination for the final. What is like just based entirely on the jerseys, on the jersey possibilities here. So for me, I think right now, like here's the thing: the tough part for this finale is that regardless, you're going to get a blue team and a team that isn't. So one blue team is coming in, and I guess just based on like the symmetry, like I guess to the symmetry to a certain extent, Tampa Montreal would be kind of nice. Like
blue and red.
A very clean look. I mean, it's basically Montreal with a different, just one team is not from Toronto. It's a very clean look. I think you get, especially like I think if again in a dream scenario, you could have games where the Canadiens are wearing their home reds versus Tampa's home blues, which would look very cool. But I guess just in terms of like from that matchup, I think I got to go with the home Canadian Reds versus Tampa's whites, white and blue. I think you got to go there. I think it's a good look. I think. Actually, the Canadiens white jersey matched up against the blue one also wouldn't be the blue Tampa jersey also wouldn't be that good. Be pretty good. I guess but I gotta go with the Canadian Reds and the Tampa Whites. I think would be the best possible look. What say you?
I wish they went like they allowed the reverse retro because I low key really like the blue reverse retro Habs jersey. So it would be cool to see the reverse retro Habs jersey against the Tampa Whites. Or if we lived in a world where like the NHL allowed both teams to wear colored jerseys, you would do the Habs red versus the Tampa Bay like all black jersey.
Oh, interesting.
Like, that would be pretty tight too. And then if those two obviously aren't in the finals and we get like the very standard two best teams facing off, it'd be wild to see the Vegas gold versus the Tampa all black or the Tampa white. But they won't allow that because they don't like fun.
Yeah. Even like the Tampa home blue jersey versus like that Vegas gold would be
or the
really
Vegas
cool.
red.
Yeah, like the reverse retro. I liked their reverse retro. That was a good jersey. Like they should
clean.
Keep that one. They should,
especially since they didn't really have anything to work off of.
Oh yeah, they had literally only old Vegas teams to go off of in that, and I think they did a great job with that. I think that, and I hope the reverse retro cup series comes back at some point because I want to see a Kraken version of the Seattle Metropolitans jersey. Like that has to happen at some point, right? Like that's
I mean, they probably should do that too, where they're like, okay, Seattle, you came in 1 year after the reverse retros, but you still get a say. So here's like a fourth jersey because you're obviously going to need money coming in anyway. So pick whatever, and we'll just pick a date for you against the Canucks or something to wear them because they got to establish some kind of brand. Let them reverse retro it up too.
Yeah, like literally imagine like that Seattle S, and then instead it says like Kraken inside in the S, the way like the Vancouver Millionaires logo does, and then you replace like the green barber pole stripe with like that blue or teal that they're wearing.
Yeah.
And then like it's like that blue and red. That would look very fresh. That'd be a very fresh uniform. I would have to buy that. That would look incredible.
Yeah, there's a lot of jerseys that I want to get. Seattle,
so many.
I don't know. Maybe it doesn't look that great. The Seattle like just generic jersey. I like
Are you kidding? I love them. I think they look great.
It's a bit plain. I also think what happened was I saw the original mock-up of like the colors that they had chosen when it was just the salmon and the light cyan and like the black and the dark gray. It implied that they were going to go with like a radically like bright colored jersey, like something a bit more vibrant and fun. And instead the colors that they did end up choosing were just kind of like more of the same. Like it kind of just fell in line with the other jerseys in the league. That's where like I respect like what Vegas did with their all gold jersey or their all red jersey. Cause it's like no other team is doing different shit. and I appreciate teams for trying something new. And so for Seattle, it would have been nice to see like a complete like salmon white jersey with gray piping, but can't win them all.
I think to be fair, they got kind of stuck in the sense of like with Vegas, right? There was nothing to model off of in the sense of like from a pro sports standpoint. Like in Vegas, they were the first ones. So they kind of were like, okay, we have a clean slate to go off of here. We can pick anything we want. Whereas with Seattle, there's already kind of a history of what the teams in that market use. So like a lot of blues, a lot of green, and a lot of greens are used in their uniform because they're, city right by the ocean in the Puget Sound. Like ocean is very much a part of the Seattle fabric. So it made sense to me that they went with where they did. I did find it interesting that they added red. Like the fact that they added red, I think is very cool. And it gives something unique to that uniform. And it gives it, like, again, it's another color scheme that we don't have in the NHL. Like whether or not those colors individually are used all the time, like we don't have a team with blue, teal, and red. Like that's a new concept on its own. And I think that's cool. And that's what I look for in those teams. I think the Pacific Division has the best uniforms. Don't at me on that. Next year, they're gonna have the best uniform collection because every team kind of has something different going for them, and I love that.
Fair enough. Well, anyways, folks, thanks for tuning into this episode. Even though it was a bit light on the Canucks content, we got to go around the league, as they say. As always, you can subscribe, and rate our podcast on every available podcast service that you use. Leave us a review. We always appreciate those. Check out our YouTube channel. We post every podcast in video format. You can check out my wicked tan that I got going on in my face. I look wonderful. Lachlan, he's looking all right too. There's of course
your fashion changes when you turn 24. Yes.
Then there's, of course, our Patreon, where we have $1 and $5 tiers as well, where we post exclusive content. Lachlan, he's always posting he was. I guess he's not really technically doing it because the season's over. The regular season's over. But when the regular season is on, he posts his exclusive articles where he rates the North Division, the power rankings, if you will. Those will kickstart again, obviously, in September, October, whenever the season begins again. But we post exclusive episodes as well, where we basically just shoot the shit, talk about completely random crap that doesn't really have anything to do with hockey. Occasionally does, but you never know. But until then, Mr. Lachlan, where can the fine folks find you?
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Lach and the Crease. And you can find my writing at lachandthecrease.com. I write sometimes. I think I have an article coming out soon. At least I'm trying to manifest it. I'm trying to manifest an article on my website soon. Cody, where can they find you?
The fine folks can find me at Cody Sievertson on Twitter. And eventually, I will get my season recap done on the Utica Comets 2020-2021 season. I encountered some errors in my formulas the other night, and it caused me to have a bit of an anxiety attack because I was basically referring to data that doesn't make any sense, which was very frustrating. And so now I'm trying to overhaul all of my charts that I had been relying on the entire season as I try to get out a season recap before more prospects and players. Yeah, before next season, but also before like all the current prospects like leave to go to play in Europe, which we just saw with Lucas Yashik. So I like under the gun to try and get something finished before everybody's gone, especially before the expansion draft, because one of Jonah Gadjevich or Cole Lind might be a Seattle Kraken by this time next month. So until then, folks. I know, geez. There's a lot coming up once this playoffs is over. But until then, folks, we will catch you. No doubt. You can catch us on our next episode, which will probably be dropping next Tuesday, depending on what drops in the news-o-sphere for hockey. Cheers, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.